Hey everybody, these 15 buildings were designed without a single right angle, bending the rules of architecture to feel more organic and alive. Here are 15 of the most amazing buildings that are built without right angles. Let's start with number 15, the Lotus Temple in New Delhi, India. The Lotus Temple in New Delhi is a Baha'i house of worship that opened to the public in 1986. Its unique flower-like structure contains no right angles on the exterior. It was designed by Iranian-American architect Fariborz Sabah, and the temple consists of 27 freestanding marble-clad petals that are arranged in clusters of 3, forming 9 sides and 9 entrances. These lead to a central dome structure, creating a fully symmetrical circular layout devoid of orthogonal geometry. Now, the building's design draws inspiration from the lotus flower, which holds some spiritual significance across many cultures in India. Now, the structure is composed of reinforced concrete and then covered in a white pentelic marble imported from Greece. These petal-like forms curve gracefully without intersecting at conventional 90-degree angles. The result is a structure that appears organic and fluid, in contrast to the hard edge style common in such institutional architecture. Internally, the central hall is an expansive circular space with a capacity of about 2,500 people. Natural light enters the temple through spaces between the petals, eliminating the need for artificial lighting during daylight hours. The geometry of the petals is governed by a complex set of mathematical curves to ensure both structural integrity and aesthetic harmony. Unlike most religious buildings that feature sharp corners or rectilinear forms, the Lotus Temple's completely curvilinear layout reinforces the Baha'i emphasis on unity and inclusivity. The absence of straight lines or right angles mirrors its spiritual themes, non-denominationalism and universality. Despite being a modern building, it's quickly become one of the most visited structures, drawing millions of people annually. The entire complex, including its surrounding pools and gardens, is designed to support the curved form of the main structure. Engineering for the project required some custom molds and extensive coordination, as no prefabricated structural forms were suited to that organic curve. From an architectural standpoint, though, the Lotus Temple is a rare example of how form, function, and symbolism can be unified without relying on conventional design. That enduring popularity and iconic silhouette demonstrate the viability of architecture that deliberately avoids right angles, while also maintaining public accessibility and structural effectiveness. Number 14. The Girkin, London. Located in the financial district of London, 30 St. Mary Axe, more commonly referred to as the Girkin, is one of the most recognizable non-orthogonal skyscrapers in the world. It was completed in 2003 and officially opened in 2004. This 180-meter tall tower was designed by Norman Foster and Ken Shuttleworth of Foster & Partners. Now, it stands out not only because of that elliptical, tapering form, but also due to the complete lack of traditional right-angled edges in the exterior design. The building is a technically complex feat of engineering. It's shaped like a bullet or a cigar with a circular footprint and a tapering body that reduces wind deflection. It uses a diagrid structural system. Now, essentially, it's a diagonal steel framework that eliminates the need for any internal columns, making the building efficient structurally and spatially. The lack of any right angles here allowed the engineers to achieve greater energy performance by optimizing natural ventilation. This was one of the first commercial towers in London to incorporate this passive environmental control of this scale. The facade is made of over 5,000 glass panels arranged in a helical pattern, not only contributing to its aesthetic identity but also to the airflow efficiency of the structure. It also uses double glazing and solar shading features to help minimize any energy use, and the curved geometry allows for better wind performance compared to traditional towers, and it significantly reduces wind loads, which will mitigate downdrafts at the pedestrian level. The core of the building contains elevators, stairs, and the service infrastructure, which allows for an open-plan office space around the perimeter. Now, this internal configuration, combined with the radial floor plan, maximizes usable area, and it allows for a unique panoramic experience for the occupants. The top of the building contains a domed restaurant and an event space that provides uninterrupted views of the city, which further highlights the benefits of this unconventional design. From a city planning perspective, the Girkin marks a departure from London's typically rectangular skyline. Its shape was specifically intended to reduce shadows cast on surrounding streets and structures, addressing common occurrences in dense urban environments. Despite the bulk and the height, the building is viewed positively for how it integrates into the cityscape with minimal disruption. The building has become a global architectural icon and a model for future skyscrapers that aim to combine form with function. Its status as a landmark structure in London has made it a symbol of contemporary architecture and a prototype for buildings without right angles in dense cities worldwide. Number 13. Kunsthaus Austria. Kunsthaus, often referred to as the Friendly Alien, is an art museum located in Graz, Austria, and it's well known for its organic, blob-like architecture. Opened in 2003 as part of the city's designation as the European Capital of Culture, the building was designed by architects Peter Cook and Colin Fournier. This structure rejects traditional conventions almost entirely, including the exclusion of right angles in the exterior form. The building's outer shell is composed of a blue acrylic skin made from iridescent plastic panels, creating a smooth, rounded appearance that resembles a biological organism. It features a biomorphic shape that curves and bulges in all directions with no straight walls or corners. The structural system beneath the skin consists of a steel skeleton that supports the asymmetric freeform shell, and the main interior exhibition space, while more regular in layout for practical reasons, still follows the fluidity of the exterior with curved walls and ceilings. Now, a key design element here of this museum is the Bix facade. That's a media installation built into the skin of the building that uses 930 fluorescent lamps controlled by computer software to display imagery, animations, or text. This interactive feature turns the surface into a screen, enhancing its identity as an integrated contemporary structure. Kunsthaus was designed with a conscious contrast in mind. It sits adjacent to classical Baroque architecture and the medieval Mur River promenade. Its flowing, alien-like presence among the older buildings was intended to create a visible conversation between old and new architectural philosophies. This nonlinear form also reflects the institution's purpose to showcase contemporary art, design, and media without the constraints of traditional spaces. Another notable aspect is the lack of any traditional windows. Instead, the structure has a series of nozzles or tube-like protrusions on the surface, each serving as a skylight or a viewfinder. These appendages break up the form and provide directional light to various interior zones, contributing to the visual quality of both the inside and the outside of the building. From an engineering standpoint, the project required extensive use of modeling software to handle this irregular geometry. This was essential for fabricating the curved components and for coordinating the placement of any support systems. Kunsthaus, it's a leading example of what's known as blobitecture, a form of architecture that embraces irregularity and softness, offering proof that viable public buildings can be constructed with no right angles, while also still serving complex requirements. Number 12. The Museum of Pop Culture, MoPOP in Seattle. The Museum of Pop Culture in Seattle, Washington, originally known as the Experience Music Project, was designed by architect Frank Gehry and opened to the public in 2000. It is one of the most well-known buildings in the U.S. that features no consistent right angles on its exterior. Gehry, famous for his use of deconstructivist forms, based the design on the idea of capturing the fluid energy of music, particularly rock and roll, in architectural form. The exterior of MoPOP is made of stainless steel and painted aluminum panels and molded into sweeping curved forms that fold, twist, and ripple. The building almost appears liquid in form, resembling a melted mass or a cluster of billowing sheets. No flat walls or sharp corners are used in the external structure. Instead, the billowing flows in various directions, creating highly sculptural appearance from every angle. Each section of the museum's skin is uniquely shaped and colored. Now, the surfaces are finished in multiple hues, silver, blue, red, and gold, intended to reflect different moods or aspects of pop culture. Gehry reportedly used electric guitars sliced into sections as inspiration for the building's fragmented forms, and the curving exterior panels were prefabricated using computer-aided design systems. This parametric approach enabled each panel to fit precisely with the others, despite no two being exactly the same. The structure underneath the skin consists of a steel frame that adapts to the varying curves and overhangs a bit. To accommodate the unusual form, the construction had to be meticulously planned and executed. Fabricators and builders all had to coordinate. The result is a large structure that avoids traditional symmetry or geometry, while also still meeting seismic and structural requirements for this region. Inside, the building continues that free-form layout with a central atrium rising up through the curved walls, irregular pathways, and asymmetrical spaces. While some galleries and exhibition areas use more conventional layouts, circulation zones and key gathering areas maintain the visual language of non-linear flowing forms. Sightlines bend and wrap, and there are few areas where the eye rests on a flat surface or a right-angled intersection. The building's location adjacent to the Space Needle and within the Seattle Center makes it a focal point of the urban landscape, and it's further highlighted by that unconventional shape. Public opinion on its design has been mixed, but it remains a prominent and frequently photographed structure due to that dramatic form. Mopop's lack of right angles is not a mere design flourish. It shows the underlying philosophy of the institution. It celebrates creativity, disruption, and cultural transformation. Gary's design challenges traditional architectural expectations, and it provides a fitting container for a museum dedicated to dynamic subject matter like music, science fiction, gaming, and other elements of pop culture. Number 11. The TWWA Flight Center in New York City. The TWWA Flight Center, now integrated into the TWWA Hotel at John F. Kennedy International Airport in New York, is one of the most iconic mid-century buildings that completely avoids right angles in its exterior. Designed by Finnish-American architect Eero Saarinen and opened in 1962, this terminal was built for Trans World Airlines, or TWA, and it quickly became a symbol of modern aviation architecture. This design reflects the themes of flight and motion, with a swooping, wing-like concrete roof and continuous curves that define the entire thing. The building is characterized by its bird-in-flight form. The roof splits into 4 smooth parabolic shells with dramatic overhangs and flaring lines. No traditional straight walls here, or boxy outlines exist on the exterior. Every surface flows organically into the next. The reinforced concrete used for the roof and walls was molded into these complex curves using custom wood framework, a highly advanced construction method for the time. These curves are aesthetic and structural, and they distribute loads efficiently without really relying on rectangular geometry. Inside, the same principles are applied. The interior spaces are marked by sweeping staircases, curving ticket counters, and flowing mezzanines that avoid any visual rigidity. Even the seating areas, signage, and departure gates followed Saarinen's vision of fluidity, which reinforced the idea of air travel as a futuristic and graceful experience. When the terminal opened, it was hailed as a masterpiece of expressive modernism. However, the original facility struggled to meet the demands of increasing passenger volume and jet-era travel. It was decommissioned in 2001 and sat unused for many years until a preservation campaign succeeded in protecting it as a historic structure. In 2019, after extensive restoration, it was reopened as the TWWA Hotel, with the original terminal serving as the hotel's centerpiece. Despite its age, though, the building's non-right-angle design still remains striking and relevant. The curving forms proved influential in later terminal and airport designs, many of which tried to capture the same sense of elegance and futurism. Saarinen's use of geometry, eschewing right angles in favor of motion-inspired curves, made the TWWA Flight Center one of the few major public buildings in the world to fully commit to a non-orthogonal layout. Today, the restored building stands as a functioning hotel and a living museum of 20th century design. That organic architecture continues to draw visitors and students, showing how effective nonlinear forms can be when aligned with a strong conceptual vision. The TWWA Flight Center is a rare example of how even large-scale infrastructure can embrace sweeping curves and still function efficiently, artistically, and memorably. Number 10. The Sage Gateshead, England. The Sage Gateshead, an international music and performing arts center located on the southern bank of the River Tyne in Gateshead, England, opened in 2004. It was designed by architect Norman Foster. This building is immediately recognizable for its long, undulating glass and steel structure, which contains no right angles in its visible exterior. The entire roof and facade are composed of curved glass and steel panels forming a continuous organic shell shaped like a stretched and rippling bubble. The form was driven by aesthetic and acoustic considerations. It contains 3 main performance halls, each constructed as a separate acoustically isolated unit housed beneath the curved outer shell. These internal halls are independent of the building's skin, which wraps over them like a transparent canopy. This approach eliminates the need for orthogonal joints in the outer structure while allowing flexibility in the design of the interior spaces. The roof consists of over 3,000 stainless steel panels, and the walls are largely composed of glass to allow panoramic views of the river and Newcastle's quayside. The curved surface was designed to reflect and amplify sound outwards towards the city, reinforcing the center's identity as a public art space. And unlike traditional music venues here, housed in boxy buildings, the Sage's flowing outline stands as a metaphor for sound, waves, and rhythm. Internally, the non-right angle motif continues, with curving walkways, staircases, and mezzanines. Natural light floods the interior through the curved glass walls, which also help to regulate temperature and daylight distribution. The Sage was a key part of the Gateshead Quayside regeneration project and helped transform the area into a cultural destination. It sits near other notable structures like the Gateshead Millennium Bridge and the Baltic Center for Contemporary Art, and it forms a cluster of modern buildings that contrast with the older industrial architecture nearby. Although the building's shape was controversial during its planning stages, it's since become an iconic part of the Tyneside skyline. The absence of right angles in its design wasn't just a stylistic choice, but strategic. It serves both the acoustic demands of a music venue and the aesthetic goal of creating a landmark. It still remains one of the UK's most significant works from the early 21st century. Number 9. The Autotomium. The Autotomium in Brussels is a structure that defies architectural conventions. It was designed by engineer André Waterkeen for Expo 58, that's the 1958 Brussels World Fair. The building consists of 9 interconnected spheres representing the unit cell of an iron crystal, magnified 165 billion times. With the circular nodes and cylindrical connectors, the Autotomium has no right angles in its external structure. It stands at over 102 meters tall. Each of the spheres is 18 meters in diameter and clad in aluminum. They're connected by tubes containing escalators and stairs, which allow visitors to move between the levels. While the tops of the spheres are accessible to the public, the others are used for mechanical service and structural support. The topmost sphere offers an amazing view of Brussels. The choice to represent a molecule was symbolic, reflecting optimism about science and progress in the post-war era. The geometric design is based on the body-centered cubic structure of iron atoms, an unconventional inspiration for architecture that did result in a highly distinctive structure. Every aspect of its external shape relies on curves and diagonals, no flat surfaces or right angles here. Internally, the structure had to be engineered carefully to allow for public access, while also maintaining its stability. Those connecting tubes were constructed with steel reinforcements and bracing systems to handle the complex load transfers. Due to their unusual shape, the Autotomium presented unique challenges in maintenance, many of which had to be resolved with custom-built components. The building was originally intended to be temporary and then just dismantled after the expo, but it quickly became a symbol of modern Brussels and was preserved. In 2006, it underwent a major renovation that replaced the aluminum skin and updated the interior to better serve its role as a museum and a tourist destination. The upgrade preserved the original form while enhancing the visitor experience. Today, the Autotomium is considered one of the most iconic examples of 20th century futuristic design. The lack of right angles is essential to its identity. Any attempt to incorporate traditional geometry would have undermined the intent to mimic molecular symmetry. It demonstrates how structure can transcend traditional design through the use of scientific models and non-orthogonal geometry. Its lasting appeal lies in the visual boldness and its success in turning a complex concept into a functional and accessible space. Number 8. Louis Vuitton Foundation, Paris, France. The Louis Vuitton Foundation, located in Paris, is an art museum and a cultural center designed by Frank Gehry. Opened in 2014, this building is composed almost entirely of curved glass panels and sweeping forms, with virtually no right angles on its exterior. Its design mimics the appearance of a sailing ship with billowing sails, an effect achieved by 12 massive glass sails that wrap around the structure. It was built on a concrete core housing the galleries and structural functions, but what makes it architecturally distinct is that outer shell. The curved glass panels were manufactured using advanced 3D modeling and CNC tech, and each pane is uniquely shaped. There are no repeated or standardized elements here. These transparent panels sit on top of a wooden and steel framework that mimics the appearance of the ribs and beams found in traditional shipbuilding. Gehry's design emphasizes motion and transparency. Rather than using regular geometry, the Louis Vuitton Foundation employs arcs, sloped planes, and convex shapes to guide sightlines and movement. This creates a visitor experience where each angle offers a different perspective on the building's form and the surrounding landscape. The reflective glass also interacts with light and weather, which creates a changing visual effect. Internally, the gallery spaces are more rectangular to accommodate art installations, but even here, transitions between the levels and rooms use ramps and curved walls to minimize any hard corners. Staircases, skylights, and corridors avoid boxy layouts, and pathways are framed by curved balustrades and angled landings. The circulation design encourages exploration in a free-form manner rather than a fixed route. The engineering challenges were pretty substantial here. Over 3,500 glass panels had to be custom fabricated to achieve that curvature. A dedicated team of engineers used a 3D software developed by Dassault Systems, typically used for aerospace design, to model and manage the construction process. The Louis Vuitton Foundation reflects a broader trend in modern architecture, where form is driven by concept and aesthetics rather than adherence to right-angled constraints. Gary's consistent rejection of orthogonal geometry in this project shows the building's identity is a sculptural object in itself, not just a container for artwork. The lack of right angles isn't incidental, it's a fundamental thing to how the building interacts with its environment and communicates its cultural mission. Number 7. Hadar Eliev Center in Azerbaijan. The Hadar Eliev Center in Baku is widely recognized as one of the most visually fluid structures of the 21st century. Designed by the late Zaha Hadid and opened in 2012, the building is defined by its continuous flowing lines and complete lack of right angles in its exterior profile. The structure's shape resembles a smooth wave or a dune that carves upward from the ground and then cascades back down, creating the impression of motion frozen in time. Commissioned as a cultural center by the Azerbaijani government, the building houses a conference hall, museum, galleries, and offices. The design intentionally avoids any sharp intersections or linear separations, and its form rises from the surrounding landscape as if it was part of the terrain. This approach was made possible by a complex steel space frame system clad in fiberglass reinforced concrete and glass fiber reinforced polyester panels. No part of the exterior relies on right angles or traditional vertical walls. Instead, the surface of the building twists and bends to create different volumes, all of which are seamlessly connected. The structure is supported by a concealed internal skeleton that distributes the loads across the varying curves without the need for any visible columns or beams. Inside, the nonlinear design does continue. The main lobby features a huge open space with no visible support pillars and a fluid floor plan that mimics the curves of the exterior. The pathways, staircases, and balconies all follow sinuous lines. Lighting and acoustics were integrated into the curves, and the custom furniture was designed to match the geometry of the walls and floors. Hadid's vision was to break from the rigid formality of Soviet-era architecture, which had dominated Baku for decades. This building stands in stark contrast with its flowing organic form, expressing innovation and cultural transformation. It was designed to represent the future of Azerbaijan, modern, dynamic, and globally connected. The project was pretty complex. It required years of research and testing to achieve both the aesthetic and the engineering goals. Many components had to be fabricated off-site and assembled like puzzle pieces. Even today, the building is referenced in architectural education as a case study in how to construct viable structures that entirely abandon traditional geometry. The Hadar Eliev Center demonstrates that a public building can function at full scale without a single exterior right angle. The form is not just a design, but it's a statement. It's a fully realized functional space that uses advanced technology to explore what's possible when traditional constraints are removed. Number 6. The Milwaukee Art Museum expansion. The Milwaukee Art Museum is a cultural complex situated at the shore of Lake Michigan. While the museum itself includes multiple buildings constructed over several decades, the most visually striking and unconventional part of the site is the Quadracci Pavilion, designed by Spanish architect Santiago Calatrava. It was completed in 2001, and this addition to the museum is not only a landmark for a city, but also a globally recognized example of a building that largely avoids right angles in favor of flowing curves, tapering structures, and kinetic elements. The pavilion is perhaps most famous for its movable sunshade known as the Brise Soleil. This massive set of white steel wings that span over 217 feet when fully opened and are mounted atop a curved glass atrium, open and close throughout the day to control sunlight and glare within the museum's interior, mimicking the motion of a bird in flight. This kinetic feature is integrated into the building's form, emphasizing the core design principle: movement without rigidity. Unlike traditional buildings that often follow rectangular layouts to accommodate flat walls for hanging art, the pavilion here uses an organic sculptural language. The interior includes arched entryways that rise into vaulted ceilings, constructed of concrete ribs that fan outwards like the vertebrae of a spine. These curved ribs don't intersect at right angles but rather flare outwards, creating a dynamic and airy space with flowing sightlines. The interior walkways and staircases twist and arc, often eschewing straight lines altogether. The floor plan itself is asymmetrical, and it's based on a long axial form that opens towards the lakefront. The entire building appears to just unfold from the base structure outwards to the wings. Glass is used generously to blur the lines between interior and exterior, which further emphasizes the curvature and the lightness. The plans avoid any perception of traditional boxiness or girder-like order, reflecting Calatrava's background in architecture and structural engineering. Those curved concrete surfaces and ribs were formed using custom molds. The brise soleil was constructed from lightweight steel and balanced using sophisticated hydraulic systems that automatically adjust to any wind condition. Thousands of components had to be fabricated with precision, as no two panels or beams were exactly alike. This made digital modeling essential. From a practical standpoint, though, the museum's design allows for a dramatic visual experience. Visitors are drawn upwards through a sequence of spaces that feel continuous and interconnected rather than segmented. Light pours through the glass walls and the oculus above the central hall, highlighting the sculptural qualities of the architecture itself. The choice to forego right angles in this building reflects a shift in museum architecture towards experiential design. Instead of presenting art in a neutral box-like shell, the Quadracci Pavilion immerses the visitor in a spatial experience that complements the art, while also standing as an artwork of its own. Calatrava's design has drawn comparisons to bones, wings, fish skeletons, and boats, each organic in form and all absent of traditional right-angle geometry. The building wasn't without its challenges, though. Maintenance of the Soleil has required specialized attention, and the unique shapes meant that retrofits and repairs are more complicated than in traditional buildings. Nevertheless, though, the structure has aged well, and it remains a centerpiece of the Milwaukee skyline. By completely rejecting right angles here and embracing curvature and kinetic expression, the Milwaukee Art Museum's Quadracci Pavilion has achieved something rare in large-scale architecture. It functions effectively as a museum while also operating as a sculpture in its own right. It is a blend of engineering, aesthetics, and user experience, and it makes it one of the most significant buildings of its kind. Number 5. Lasagrada Familia, Barcelona, Spain. Lasagrada Familia is one of the most unusual and ambitious projects. It's located in Barcelona. This Roman Catholic basilica has been under construction since 1882, and it's expected to be completed in the coming years. Its design was largely envisioned by the Catalan architect Antonio Gaudí, who took over the project in 1883 and transformed it into a comprehensive study in curvilinear geometry, natural forms, and symbolic structure. Despite being over a century old, the building continues to stand as one of the most famous examples of architecture that avoids conventional right angles. Now, the first thing that sets it apart is the overall plan and composition. Unlike most cathedrals, which follow cruciform layouts composed of rectangular chapels and right-angled transepts, Gaudí designed this basilica with a central nave flanked by angled columns that branch like trees, supporting vaulted ceilings in the shape of hyperboloids and paraboloids. The use of these geometries throughout the building gives it an organic forest-like atmosphere. The columns tilt and the branch and the walls curve, and the vaults rise in tapering patterns that resemble natural canopies. Externally, the building is dominated by spires and facades filled with detailed stone carvings. Each elevation of the basilica is distinct, yet all are connected by a common theme: the avoidance of straight lines. Gaudí believed that nature contains no right angles, and he sought to imitate natural forms in every detail. The facades undulate with figures, vines, and niches, forming surfaces that seem almost alive. Even the windows are formed from compound curves, often composed of overlapping circles or ellipses. His approach to geometry was artistic. He used advanced models too, and often involving hanging chains and mirror systems to understand how curved forms distribute weight. These experiments led him to adopt ruled surfaces and double-curved planes, which are rare in traditional architecture, but efficient in structural terms. One of his key innovations was the use of catenary arches and hyperbolic paraboloids to form the structure's skeleton. The construction of the building was particularly slow due to the complex geometry and the level of handcrafted detail involved. The building has been funded almost entirely through private donations, and each generation of architects and craftsmen has faced the challenge of interpreting Gaudi's vision using the tools available at the time. In recent decades, digital modeling and CNC fabrication have accelerated progress by enabling precise creation of the building's intricate, non-standard components, and inside, the absence of these right angles creates an immersive experience. The ceiling rises like a forest canopy supported by branching columns with no visible beam intersections or flat walls. The result is a space where geometry and light interact constantly. One cool aspect of the building is that it achieves this complexity without sacrificing functionality. The building does serve as an active place of worship and accommodates thousands of visitors per day. It includes acoustically designed chapels, accessible walkways, and viewing towers, all integrated within this flowing geometry. Gaudi himself once said, "There are no straight lines or sharp corners in nature. Therefore, buildings must have no straight lines or sharp corners." This philosophy is visible in every detail of Lasagrada Familia, from the spiral staircases to the ribbed vaults. Even decorative elements like railings, fonts, and sculptures are based on curved, natural motifs. More than a century after construction started, it still remains a work in progress, not just in physical form, but also as a continuing experiment in geometry, structure, and faith. Its refusal to conform to traditional architectural norms and its embrace of these complex curves, angles, and mathematical surfaces make it one of the most enduring and admired examples of architecture without right angles. Number 4. Kunsthaus Bregenz, Austria. The Kunsthaus Bregenz, located on the shores of Lake Constance in western Austria, is a contemporary art museum designed by Swiss architect Peter Zumthor and completed in 1997. While it may not immediately resemble some of the other more dramatically curved or sculptural buildings on this list, it does earn its place due to the rigorous avoidance of traditional right-angle facade articulation and its subtle use of non-orthogonal spatial arrangements. The building does challenge your perception of geometry and space through the interplay of materials, light, and the nuance of the structure. It's a rectangular box when viewed in plan, but its execution defies the typical expectations associated with that form. The glass facade consists of large, slightly overlapping translucent glass panels that wrap the building like a second skin. These panels don't meet at a sharp 90-degree corner, but are offset and layered to create a soft glowing effect, especially at night when the building's illuminated from within. The interior is where the geometry becomes more unconventional. The walls, floors, and ceiling are all formed from untreated concrete, but Zumthor avoided the use of decorative joints or right-angled visual boundaries. The museum is structured around a central vertical circulation core with staircases that flow gently between levels. Each gallery space is defined by subtle shifts in material and light rather than by distinct wall boundaries. The floor slabs are suspended from the ceiling above rather than resting on columns below, allowing uninterrupted vertical walls. This structural approach lets the floor edges float and curve slightly due to their suspension, which enhances the spatial fluidity. And the building has no decorative elements either, yet the lack of visual hard stops and corners encourages an open-ended experience. One unique feature of the Kunsthaus is its lighting system. Daylight is filtered through the translucent facade and layer of diffusing panels before entering the gallery spaces. Light and shadow become architectural elements, softening edges and preventing the delineation of corners. Zumthor's design philosophy is deeply rooted in material authenticity and your sensory experience. While the building uses planar surfaces rather than overt curves, it breaks from convention by eliminating any visual right angles through soft transitions and ambiguous boundaries. And as a result, it becomes an architectural experience rather than a static container, and its geometric subtlety qualifies it as a building without right angles in the traditional sense. Its influence can be seen in later minimalist and experiential architecture that seeks to dissolve the boundary between structure and atmosphere. Kunsthaus Bregenz, it's a compelling case of how geometry can be manipulated not just through physical form, but also through light, perception, and structural clarity. Number 3. The Harpa Concert Hall and Conference Center in Iceland. The Harpa Concert Hall and Conference Center is a landmark building in Reykjavik, Iceland, situated on the edge of the North Atlantic Ocean. Designed by Danish architectural firm Henning Larsen Architects in collaboration with Icelandic artist Ólafur Eliasson and completed in 2011, the building is notable for its unconventional design, especially in the facade. Rather than using typical right angles, Harpa's design employs a system of quasi-geometric crystalline forms that draw inspiration from Iceland's volcanic geology and basalt columns. The most visually arresting feature here is that facade. It's composed of a honeycomb-like lattice of geometric glass modules. These modules are three-dimensional, shaped as distorted hexagonal and quasi-cubic forms known as quasi-bricks, which project outward at multiple angles. Each panel of the facade reflects and refracts light differently, creating a kaleidoscopic effect both inside and outside the building. And the panels are clad in either clear or dichroic glass, meaning they shift color depending on the viewing angle. This constantly changing exterior gives the impression of movement and complexity with no uniform angle dominating the structure. Inside, it continues to defy traditional norms. The ceilings and staircases and walls are all folded and faceted, creating a jagged landscape that mimics the geological texture of Iceland's natural formations. The use of dark matte finishes contrasts with the glowing prismatic facade, creating a dynamic interplay between interior shadow and exterior light. The main concert hall, Elborg, is designed as a curved volume within the building, but even here, right angles are minimized. The hall is shaped with optimized acoustics, with walls that curve and ripple subtly to distribute the sound evenly. The seating layout and balconies also follow curved trajectories, reinforcing the departure from linear planning. The structure is a hybrid steel and concrete frame with the facade acting as a partial load-bearing element, so advanced digital modeling and parametric design tools were required to fabricate the parts. Symbolically, though, Harpa serves as a representation of Iceland's cultural identity. Its form draws from both natural and artistic sources, merging architectural engineering with visual art. The lack of any right angles in the building isn't just a stylistic gesture, but it's an embodiment of the country's rugged, irregular terrain and its break from conventional European classic architecture. Harpa has received numerous international awards for its architecture and engineering. It remains a central venue for the Iceland Symphony Orchestra, Icelandic opera, and major international conferences. In architectural discourse, though, it is often cited as a successful example of interdisciplinary collaboration between architects and artists. The complex geometry, the minimal use of right angles, and emphasis on light and reflection place it among the most innovative non-orthogonal buildings constructed in the 21st century. Number 2. Metropole Parasol, Spain. Metropole Parasol, located in the old quarter of Seville in Spain, is one of the largest wooden architectural structures in the world and a prime example of contemporary architecture that avoids right angles. Designed by German architect Jürgen Meyer and completed in 2011, the building is colloquially known as Las Setas, or the Mushrooms, due to its appearance, a series of massive mushroom-shaped parasols that rise over the plaza in an organic lattice-like formation. Its form, structure, and function together make it a definitive case study in non-orthogonal design. Now, the origins of this project date back to a municipal competition in the early 2000s aimed at revitalizing an underutilized square. The area, once home to traditional markets, had become a vacant lot, and the city wanted a modern structure that would house a new market. Mayer's proposal, while ambitious and radically different from the surrounding Baroque and neoclassic architecture, was ultimately selected due to its multifunctional vision and dramatic geometry. The structure itself is about 150 meters long, 70 meters wide, and it rises to a height of about 26 meters. It consists of 6 large parasol-like canopies composed of crisscrossing wooden panels that bend, fold, and curve as they reach upwards towards the sky. The canopies are supported by massive tree trunk-shaped columns, some of which are hollow to house elevators and staircases that connect the different levels. Notably, there are virtually no right angles here in the external structure. The panels follow a flowing grid pattern that warps three-dimensionally, creating a sense of movement. Now, it's structured on 4 levels. The lowest level, underground, houses the Antiquarium, a museum space that preserves and displays Roman and Moorish archaeological remains, and the entrance to the museum is through curving ramps and descending paths that reflect the overall theme of fluidity. Above ground level sits the traditional marketplace where local vendors sell produce and goods, and this level is shaded by the parasols overhead and is defined by open, curved forms that integrate with the base of the wooden canopy. The lack of any rigid geometry here in the roof allows diffused light to filter down, making the space airy yet protected. A panoramic terrace tops the structure, accessible through elevators hidden within those supporting columns. The upper level features a winding curved walkway that snakes along the top of the parasols, offering elevated views of Seville. Benches, railings, and even the floor tiles of the terrace follow the non-rectilinear logic, rejecting any conventional spatial organization in favor of experiential fluidity. Now, one of the major innovations here was the use of a special bonding process to join the layers of finished pine into large curved sections that could be slotted into the grid. These joints are largely concealed, allowing the organic form of the parasols to appear continuous. This allowed the design to remain faithful to its sculptural appearance without being compromised by exposed supports. Lighting here plays a key role in enhancing the complexity of the structure. At night, the underside of the parasols is illuminated with LED lights that shift in color, which accentuate the curvature and depth of the lattice. The interplay between natural light during the day and artificial lighting at night ensures that the building remains visually dynamic across time and weather conditions. In terms of urban impact, though, it's transformed the previously neglected plaza into a lively public space. It's now a focal point for both locals and tourists, offering a place to rest, shop, learn, and admire the city. Critics initially questioned whether such a bold form would harmonize with Seville's traditional character, but over time, the structure has gained popularity for its utility and its identity. It's become one of the most photographed landmarks in the city, and it's credited with reinvigorating public life in the area. The absence of right angles is not merely a design decision, but it's central to the identity of the building. The canopy provides better wind and heat deflection due to the curved surfaces, and the terraces and pathways invite movement and exploration in a way that linear designs rarely achieve. Architecturally, the Metropole Parasol bridges multiple disciplines. It's an example of structural engineering, parametric design execution, materials science advancement, and urban planning. Its geometry challenges the norms of civic architecture, proving that non-rectilinear forms can be more than just theoretical. They can function at full scale in public spaces with social and climatic performance in mind. It stands as a defining example of 21st century architecture that breaks from the tyranny of the right angle. Its success has encouraged other cities' architects to consider alternative forms and how to explore buildings that deviate from traditional geometry, and they can foster more engaging and sustainable urban environments. Number 1. The Dome of the Rock, Israel. The Dome of the Rock, located on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, is one of the oldest and most significant examples of Islamic architecture and a historic structure that notably avoids right angles. Completed in 691 CE during the Umayyad Caliphate, this building is not only a religious and political landmark, but it's a pioneering piece of geometry-driven architecture. The structure is built around the foundation stone, a sacred rock believed by many traditions to be the site where Abraham prepared to sacrifice his son and where the Prophet Muhammad is said to have ascended to heaven during the Isra and Miraj. Instead of creating a traditional rectangular basilica, the architects chose a centralized layout featuring an octagonal base topped with a massive dome. The use of an octagon as base for the circular dome eliminates the presence of typical 90-degree angles in the building's most important spaces. The dome itself, which rises 20 meters in diameter and it's over 35 meters in height, is one of the most iconic features of the Jerusalem skyline. Originally constructed with a wooden framework and later covered with a gold-plated aluminum shell, the dome exemplifies the challenge of transitioning from a polygonal base to a smooth hemispherical form. That transition is managed by a ring of drum windows and a series of squinches, architectural devices that allow a circular dome to rest securely on an octagonal structure. Internally, the layout continues to reject those right angles. The inner sanctum surrounds the foundation stone with a set of concentric ambulatories defined by arcades and columns. These curved pathways allow visitors to circle the stone, reinforcing a sense of flow and emphasizing the sacred center rather than imposing directional symmetry. The dome and the interior are richly decorated with mosaics, calligraphy, and arabesque patterns, none of which rely on linear borders or square framing. Instead, the decorative schemes follow geometric and circular motifs, in keeping with the building's overall rejection of orthogonal principles. The interior geometry too supports the building's religious purpose, directing attention inward and upward in a way that echoes cosmic symbolism and unity. The Dome of the Rock has had a profound influence on Islamic architecture and beyond. Its geometric innovation and symbolic use of space informed later developments in mosque and shrine design. Structures like the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and late Renaissance domes also drew inspiration from its centralized form. Despite being over 1,300 years old, the Dome of the Rock remains remarkably well preserved. It's undergone several restorations throughout its history, including major refurbishments during the Abbasid Ottoman and modern Jordanian periods, and each restoration respected the original curved and octagonal geometry, maintaining the building's foundational rejection of right angles in favor of radial symmetry. In architectural terms, the Dome of the Rock does stand apart from typical early medieval structures in both its engineering and its symbolism. Through its octagonal plan, central dome, and flowing interior arrangement, it shows how spiritual architecture can be rooted in geometry that transcends the grid and connects more directly with natural, celestial, and symbolic forms.